Very good morning to you once again. If you're just joining us, this is Newsfeed AM. Let's get into this conversation now. Over 100 schools were looted and vandalized during the unrest in KwaZulu-Natal. The Basic Education Department has urged communities to call out the acts of vandalism and help protect schools. The KZN Education MEC, Kwazi Mshengu, has visited some of the schools that were affected and looted in that province. He joins us now to talk to us about the situation that faces his department there. Mr. Mshengu, thank you very much for your time. Firstly, let me just talk about what is happening right now, because it's part and parcel of what our conversation is going to be about. Mr. Mkhunu is a former radio DJ. He's just been denied bail here in Randburg in Johannesburg for what is seen as an instigator. He is seen as an instigator of the violence that we saw. You are a political leader in KZN, Mr. Mshengu. Your views about his arrest?
Morning, Xoli, and morning to the viewers. I would prefer actually not to comment on the arrest of Mr. Mkhunu and other people who have been arrested as it has happened in the past days. I would, with all due respect, request that I leave that to the responsible people who are mandated to communicate on behalf of the security cluster and on behalf of government. So I will, with due respect, request that I express no opinion on the issues of arrest. Safe to say that we continue to call on our people not to participate on any things that are on the wrong side of the law or that are not permitted to be done in law, because such things will end up, we will basically lead them to getting into trouble, but also the issues around making reckless statements, probably as a result of some kind of excitement or other things, are not helpful, particularly in the situation that we are facing, but also going forward. So we call on our people to ensure that they exercise restraint, and whatever the frustrations they may have, they need to express such frustration within the ambit of the law.
Mr. Mshengu, I understand exactly your sentiments, and that is why I prefaced my question with the words that you are a political leader in KwaZulu-Natal. Yes, I'm ambushing you about this, but I would have thought that it is important as a political leader who also leads the community in KwaZulu-Natal to come out very strongly and perhaps in support of what is happening on the part of law enforcement, to say, let's round up those who are seen as having instigated this. Surely, I think the public listening to you would have wanted you to say, at least if there are arrests, that is what we are happy about, because there has been not just destruction to property, as we're about to talk about the schools, but there's also been loss of life.
Definitely, on that aspect, Xoli, we are one in terms of the message that must go out to the public, to say all those who have participated in destruction of property, in looting, should face the full might of the law. Equally, we are saying all those who have killed innocent people, because there are innocent people that have been killed in the process, particularly in the areas around the Phoenix as well as Chatsworth, which has actually also led into the eruption of racial tensions. And as government, we are calling for decisive action against such people to be brought into book. So the message has been very consistent, as articulated by the President, all the ministers, including the Premier in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. The ANC, which is an organization that I belong to, has also been very emphatic to say the state must never surrender its authority to criminals and to people who act outside the ambit of the law. The state is called upon to exert its authority, make sure that all those who have found themselves in conflict with the law are brought to book, be it the looters, those who have vandalized, and those who have killed people. And if in the instance of instigators being found, obviously we will be very much happy to have them also behind bars, so that we actually get to the truth as to what actually informed the instigation of the anarchy and the vandalism that we have seen in the previous days.
And so you welcome Mr. Mshengu's arrest and appearance in court today, given that there are also videos. There are also videos, as the NPA was saying, that there is also video footage that they are going through where he, as they understand it, he is seen as inciting or using words of incitement to violence.
We welcome the arrest of any person whom, according to the law enforcement agencies, is alleged to be behind the destruction that we have seen in the previous days. So it's not only the arrest of Mshengu, but the arrest of any other person who is behind and who has looted, but also who has killed innocent people during the anarchy that we have experienced. So anyone whom the law enforcement agency deems as a person who has been on the wrong side of the law in the past period, that person, in our view, must be arrested and must be brought to book.
Mr. Mshengu, I thank you for indulging me on the part of the so-called instigators. Let's bring you to why we invited you to this interview, and it's to talk about the 139 schools that have been vandalized in some instances, and in some completely destroyed, having been torched. The organization called Save the Children South Africa says it believes that the schooling system in KZN, in fact in South Africa, is actually facing an education emergency. Do you agree with their sentiments?
Well, I would agree to a particular extent, obviously depending on which angle do they describe the emergency. In our view, the emergency that we are facing in the province of KwaZulu-Natal in particular is around funding, which is actually crippling our attempts to better the education, particularly for learners in rural as well as in township schools, in our quest to equalize the standard of education in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. As you remember, Xoli, that at the beginning of this financial year, we did sort of protest that we are less with 6.3 billion rands in this financial year. And that's a huge cut that was effected against the Department of Education, the apex priority of government. And in our view, that is hindering the process really of bringing about a better education for all. And with the instances of vandalism that we have recently experienced, it makes it very difficult for the Department of Education to instantly attend to those schools that have been affected, and also proceed with other programs that are aimed at basically bring about the quality of education for all in the province.
Mr. Mshengu, the schools that have been destroyed by the recent unrest, a whole 139 of them, firstly, what is their condition? But also importantly, linked to that question, while you concentrate on fixing them, what about the communities that have been waiting for schools to be built in their area? Are these schools that have now been destroyed as a result of this unrest jump the queue ahead of those communities that have been waiting for schools to be built?
Well, the damage has been on different degrees, Xoli. There are those schools where some classes have been burnt. There are schools where classes were not affected, but they targeted particular classes like an ICT lab, for example. In one of the schools, they never destroyed anything except stealing the computers. And it does appear that in that instance, the people who broke into the school had an intimate knowledge of the school, because they tried to enter through the door. They failed. They tried to enter through the roof. They failed because there's a concrete slab on the top. And then they had all the time to drill the hole behind the ICT lab, and they used that hole to basically take everything that was there. In other schools, they destroyed NSNP kitchens. They stole food and other NSNP equipments. And in other schools where they could not find anything, where we saw what was very destructive, just stoning of the school, breaking of windows and doors, basically destroying the same infrastructure that is needed for the teaching and learning to happen.
Yeah.
But the second part of your question, Xoli, we'll have to strike a delicate balance because at the center of all these things is a right to education for our learners. Now, if we don't build these schools or put in immediate measures to ensure that teaching and learning continues to take place, we may be accused of infringing on the right to education of these other learners. Equally, it will be the case with the schools that are still waiting for us to build new schools. Communities that are still waiting for us to build new schools for them. So we'll have to strike a very delicate balance so that at least we don't trample on the right of educators, of learners to education. But we are calling on communities actually to say schools should be treated as holy places because those are centers where we build communities, build families, and build the society at large. And we request our communities to stand up and defend the school the same way as some of them defended the malls and other shopping centers. It's the same vigor that we want from them to defend the schools as centers of development.
Mr. Mchunu, I must thank you very much for your time. Completely out, it's a yes or no question. Was this, Mr. Mshengu, I apologize, Mr. Mshengu, was this an attempted insurrection, a failed insurrection, or not, in your view?
Well, the president has expressed what is it that has characterized it based on the information from the security cluster. I am not a part of the security cluster, so I will not have intimate knowledge of what has actually been discovered. So we'll follow what the president articulates.
Successfully evading my question there. Kwazi Mshengu, thank you very much. He is the MEC of Education in KwaZulu-Natal. You understand the context if you have been watching this show. Mr. Mshengu serves in the exact same provincial executive in KwaZulu-Natal of the ANC as Mr. Mdumiseni Ntuli. And Mdumiseni Ntuli was very clear on this show, contradicting the president that perhaps it's an exaggeration that the country faced a failed insurrection in the past week. It's not a laughing matter for other people because some families are grieving today.